Right now, OpenAI is spending billions building giant data centers in Ohio. Meanwhile, a 25-person startup in New York trains zero models. It owns no servers, rents no GPUs, and runs zero hardware. Yet, every time a prompt passes through its API, it collects a 5% toll. In August 2026, Stripe agreed to buy that startup for $7 billion. Some reports put the final cash and stock total over $8 billion. Just 82 days earlier, the company was valued at $1.3 billion. That represents a five-fold jump in valuation in less than 3 months. Silicon Valley was stunned by the massive price tag for an API proxy wrapper, but Stripe founders Patrick Collison and John Collison were not buying software tools. They were buying the metering choke point of the entire machine economy. The acquisition links the internet payment rails directly to token consumption. To understand why Stripe paid this price, follow the live billing data. The story begins with a simple realization about language model economics. Proprietary AI models are rapidly becoming commoditized utility pipelines. In early 2023, Alex Atala co-founded OpenRouter in New York. Atala had previously served as co-founder and chief technology officer of OpenSea. Together with Louis Vichy, he built a neutral API proxy for artificial intelligence. The concept was straightforward for software engineers building consumer applications. Instead of writing code tied to OpenAI, developers pointed to one endpoint. OpenRouter automatically routed queries across hundreds of competing language models. If Anthropic lowered prices or DeepSeek improved latency, queries shifted instantly. By 2026, hundreds of model providers flooded the market with options. Software companies could no longer afford to lock into a single provider. A developer could swap model strings in VS Code in seconds. Changing GPT-4 to DeepSeek v4 required altering a single line of code. OpenRouter became the abstraction layer hiding all that underlying complexity. Speaking to the New York Times in May, Atala explained the core business model. He stated that a lot of what they do is help people find the right vendor. The platform charged a 5.5% take rate on inference spending. It was an elegant toll booth standing right between developers and model labs. By late 2025, OpenRouter processed 5 trillion tokens every week. By May 2026, that figure surged to 25 trillion tokens weekly. Its registered user base expanded rapidly to 8 million developers. OpenRouter cataloged over 400 models from 80 distinct providers. While model labs burned cash on compute, OpenRouter collected clean margin. It was the software equivalent of owning the gate to the gold mine. But behind the scenes, another company was watching this growth in real time. That company was fintech giant Stripe, and Stripe held access to OpenRouter's internal bank account. Back in October 2024, OpenRouter selected Stripe for payment handling. Every developer buying inference credits paid using Stripe infrastructure. In January 2026, Stripe made a quiet, strategic move. Stripe acquired usage-based billing platform Metronome for $128 million. Metronome specialized in tracking variable software consumption like raw API metrics. Engineers immediately integrated Metronome into OpenRouter's billing backend. The integration gave Stripe executives an unprecedented window into OpenRouter. Stripe could monitor OpenRouter's transaction volumes directly inside their own dashboard. They didn't need pitch decks or audited financials to evaluate the business. They saw real-time charts of software developers buying billions of tokens. In April 2026, OpenRouter reached $50 million in annualized revenue. By July 2026, that run rate reached $140 million. OpenRouter was scaling faster than almost any enterprise software startup in history. On May 26, 2026, OpenRouter announced a Series B round. Capital G, Alphabet's growth fund, led the $113 million investment. The transaction valued OpenRouter at $1.3 billion post-money. In press statements, Atala explicitly framed OpenRouter as the Stripe for AI. Early venture investors realized they were sitting on an extraordinary winner. Angie Midha at Andreessen Horowitz had backed OpenRouter back in its seed round. Firm partner Andreessen Horowitz invested roughly $20 million for a 17% stake. Matt Murphy at Menlo Ventures led the company's Series A financing round. Menlo Ventures deployed under $50 million, building a 6% stake. Other major venture backers joined the expanding cap table. Sequoia Capital, nVentures, ServiceNow, Snowflake, and Databricks all took pieces. But as token traffic exploded, rival enterprise acquirers took notice. Enterprise data giant Databricks quietly opened takeover discussions. Stripe CEO Patrick Collison recognized the threat to his core payment monopoly. If Databricks bought OpenRouter, they would control machine payment flows. Collison moved fast to secure the routing gateway before competitors could. On July 23, 2026, news of the deal leaked to the public. The Wall Street Journal reported Stripe was negotiating at a $10 billion valuation. Board members at A16Z and Menlo fielded urgent calls from Wall Street. An intense bidding war erupted between Stripe and rival tech firms. But Stripe held a decisive psychological and technical advantage over everyone else. Stripe already owned the transaction pipeline. On August 10, 2026, Alex Atala appeared on the 20VC podcast. Host Harry Stebbings pressed Atala on camera about the takeover reports. Stebbings repeatedly asked if Stripe was offering $10 billion in cash. Atala carefully dodged direct confirmation about active acquisition negotiations, but he laid out his strategic vision for the commoditization of AI models. Atala stated that no single lab will ever own artificial intelligence. He argued that companies building on a single model voluntarily cut their own leverage. He pointed to open-weight Chinese models like DeepSeek rivaling American frontier labs. Because model capabilities were converging, routing was the ultimate economic leverage point. While Atala spoke on podcast cameras, deal negotiations reached a climax. Industry analyst Simon Taylor later highlighted how Stripe played its hand. Stripe executives were literally staring at OpenRouter's live payment metrics. They saw the exact revenue numbers directly on their internal Stripe dashboard. Using that hard data, Stripe knocked $3 billion off the leaked price. They negotiated the final valuation down from $10 billion to over $7 billion. On August 16, 2026, Bloomberg News broke the news. Yazhou Sun, Natasha Mascarenhas, and Paige Smith reported the closed deal. Stripe had officially agreed to acquire OpenRouter for over $7 billion. TechCrunch immediately reached out to Stripe PR for official confirmation. A Stripe spokesperson responded that they do not comment on rumors or speculation. On August 17th, Axios reported the value exceeded $8 billion in cash and equity. The deal marked a 5-fold valuation increase in roughly 82 days. For venture capital backers, the returns were extraordinary. Andreessen Horowitz turned a $20 million seed investment into $1.5 billion. Menlo Ventures secured a payout of over $500 million. Total venture capital raised by OpenRouter was just $164 million. The buyout represented one of the fastest venture capital liquidations in history. Developer forums on Hacker News and Reddit erupted in intense debate. Engineers questioned how a simple API wrapper could command $8 billion. Some pointed out that OpenRouter's team had only 25 employees. That worked out to roughly $300 million in acquisition value per employee. Skeptics noted OpenRouter was valued higher than legacy airlines and industrial giants. To critics, it looked like extreme hype in an overinflated AI market. But to understand the price tag, you have to look at the architectural shift. Software is changing from human clicks to autonomous agent calls. Historically, Stripe built $159 billion business processing credit cards. A human consumer clicked buy on a website, and Stripe took 2%. But autonomous AI agents do not hold physical credit cards. Agents execute software tasks by making thousands of API calls per hour. Every call consumes fractions of a cent in compute tokens. Billing an agent requires real-time metering at microscopic subcent levels. By combining Metronome and OpenRouter, Stripe created the agentic billing layer. When an AI agent decides to execute a workflow, Stripe meters the tokens. Stripe routes the query, processes the payment, and settles with Model Labs. They place themselves right at the middle of machine-to-machine commerce. However, this massive acquisition carries serious strategic vulnerabilities. The primary counter-argument is known as the reverse proxy risk. OpenRouter's core technology is fundamentally a thin API proxy wrapper. Open-source alternatives like LiteLLM allow developers to self-host routing. Any competent engineering team can build basic model switching in-house for free. Stripe paid over $7 billion for developer distribution, not proprietary IP. If developers decide self-hosting proxy code is easy, OpenRouter's moat evaporates. The second major tension is the neutrality trap. OpenRouter grew rapidly because developers trusted its strict independence. It served as an unbiased referee among OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, and Meta. Now OpenRouter is owned by a corporate financial giant with its own agenda. Frontier AI labs spend tens of billions building models and running data centers. They risk losing direct customer relationships to an aggressive intermediary toll booth. If OpenAI or Anthropic feel threatened by Stripe, they can take countermeasures. Model Labs could restrict API access or impose direct enterprise controls. They could alter pricing tiers to penalize third-party routing proxy platforms. Alternatively, labs could build direct usage billing engines into their own systems. If the foundation Model Labs bypass OpenRouter, the gateway loses its volume. Stripe is betting heavily that multi-model fragmentation will remain permanent. If one single lab achieves true general intelligence, dynamic routing becomes obsolete. If OpenAI or Google builds a model so superior that nobody uses alternatives, routing dies. In that scenario, every developer points directly to one provider again. But Patrick Collison and John Collison are betting against total lab monopoly. They observe open source models rapidly closing the gap with proprietary frontier models. Chinese open weight models like DeepSeek V4 offer top performance at record low costs. When intelligence becomes cheap and plentiful, routing based on cost becomes critical. Software enterprises will constantly arbitrage latency, cost, and uptime across providers. OpenRouter handles 10 million registered users and 25 trillion tokens weekly. That transaction volume gives Stripe unmatched visibility into global software usage. Stripe now knows which AI models are gaining traction before Wall Street does. They see micro shifts in developer preference weeks before public announcements. That intelligence strengthens Stripe's financial products and venture investments. By acquiring OpenRouter, Stripe secures its position in the next computing cycle. They shifted from processing human payments to metering artificial intelligence compute. In the early 90s, internet infrastructure was built around physical telecom cables. In the 10 years after, web commerce was defined by credit card processing gateways. In 2026, internet infrastructure is being redrawn around token metering. The Foundation Labs spend hundreds of billions on physical hardware and nuclear power. They carry massive balance sheet risks and continuous capital expenditures. OpenRouter trains 0 models and owns 0 server racks. Yet it sits at the intersection where raw intelligence converts into software revenue. Stripe didn't buy an AI company to build artificial general intelligence. They bought the toll booth standing right outside the intelligence factory. In the AI gold rush, the biggest winner isn't the miner or shovel maker. It is the company collecting 5% on every token passing through the gate.